For this video, I'm going to take you on a tour of the Cooter's Dukes of Hazzard Museum located in Nashville, Tennessee. I realize the topic for today's video isn't very politically correct, at least by 2023 standards. So if you get triggered by the rebel flag, I would say turn off the video right now because it's basically impossible to film a Dukes of Hazzard museum without showing one. I'm going to start this video with a couple disclaimers. I know the Dukes of Hazzard is a show that a lot of people from a certain ideological point of view like to use as a punching bag, but I just don't understand the hatred towards the show. The show was a product of its time, and it was developed by Warner Brothers back in 1977. So a lot of things have changed in that time frame, and the mental gymnastics it takes to try to apply modern sensibilities to something that was developed almost 50 years ago is just a ridiculous standard, and I'm just not going there. There are a lot of TV shows that I grew up watching that would never fly by today's standards. Like, there was this really funny comedy show in the mid-'80s called Sledge Hammer, and it starred David Rash in this Dirty Harry parody where he would talk to his gun and pretty much shoot everything that moved. That's another example of a really great show that will never air on TV ever again. What he did in 1987 was innocent, but by today's standards, with all the constant mass shootings, it could definitely be misinterpreted. It really is a shame, actually, because in the 80s, things were a lot lighter, more innocent, and from my point of view, I think as a society, we've actually made a lot of regression instead of progress. I do watch old clips of this show all the time on YouTube, and I can't help but notice that in a lot of the comment sections, people bring in politics. Well, that's not going to happen on my YouTube channel. One of the features that I'd love to point out right now is YouTube does give content creators the ability to moderate the comments, and I do so on my channel videos, at least the ones that I think are going to be controversial, because I don't want politics to ever delve into this. I'm officially apolitical. I don't belong to a political party. I'm neither right nor left. I basically vote once every 4 years, and I never really talk about it, dwell on it, think about it any other day besides election day. So if you write a comment that is stupid and doesn't belong here, don't be surprised when it never actually gets posted, because for the comment section of this particular video, I have to approve every comment as written. So if you've come to this comment section to push a political agenda, that's dead on arrival. It's not going to happen. However, if you're here to reminisce about your favorite Dukes of Hazzard episodes, or talk about the country music star that you enjoyed watching guest starring on this show as a kid, by all means, that's what this comment section is for, and that's what it should be. Alright, so now a little background on me. My earliest recollections of television were watching the Dukes of Hazzard on TV. I can't for the life of me remember ever watching Sesame Street or Reading Rainbow, anything like that. All I can remember are the Dukes of Hazzard episodes, specifically the very first TV episode I ever remember watching as a kid was Carnival of Thrills. So I was about 2 years old when that episode aired, and I believe it was the original airing. That's the memory I have of the giant car jump at the end with where they jumped over like 40 stacked cars. People really don't grasp how large of an impact this show had. When this show was on TV, there were only 3 TV networks. We didn't have cable TV. There were episodes where literally half of the entire United States was watching. This was the second most popular TV show on at the time in the early 80s. The only show that beat it in ratings was Dallas, which was the 9 o'clock show, and this was the 8 o'clock show. That era of TV for us was golden as kids. I mean, Generation X grew up with all these TV shows where it was customary for a really amazing car chase and a huge car stunt, usually jumping over something ridiculous. And every show was like that. It was Hardcastle McCormick, the A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider. I mean, they were all in that formula, and it really was a golden age for action TV shows. And there hasn't been an era like that since, to be honest. The Dukes of Hazzard was the show that really pioneered those huge stunts for a TV show. Prior to that, you only saw those big car jumps and stuff in major motion pictures, but they brought it to the small screen. And what was interesting about the Dukes too is they were continuously setting world records for jumping a car. I mean, they set like 3 or 4 records while they were filming their show over the 7 seasons. So I figure I should talk about some of my favorite Dukes of Hazzard episodes. Now, one of the interesting things about the Dukes of Hazzard was the very first 5 episodes were filmed in Georgia. And after that, Warner Brothers relocated production to California. And I honestly really love the Georgia episodes. I like how gritty and realistic they are. I feel like the show did get a little watered down when they moved it to California. I also wasn't thrilled that they kind of dumbed down the Sheriff Roscoe character. He was pretty smart and he was corrupt in the original episodes, but they made him kind of a bumbling idiot later on, and I know some people love him doing the comedy, but I did prefer him as the kind of smart version of the Roscoe character. Now, I'm not putting my favorite episodes in any particular order, but Armed Bandits was a great episode. I mean, that was the pilot episode, and it basically was the world building episode where they established like the whole premise, and they had 2 really great jumps for that particular episode. They have the iconic jump over the Roscoe's cop car that basically was in the opening of pretty much every episode. I also really loved the episode Daisy's Song because it's got a really great car chase through Atlanta, and they actually did film it really in Atlanta back then. As for some of the California episodes, I feel like the Dukes Meet Cale Yarborough was probably the best of the best. That one just was packed with action. There's the scene at the end of that episode where they actually paint up 3 Dodge Chargers to look like the General Lee, and they run decoys to confuse law enforcement, and it's just a great scene, and there's a lot of great stunts in that one. I also love the episode Carnival of Thrills. There's so many iconic scenes in that one, especially Bo and Luke having the fist fight in the barn, as well as just this ridiculous off-road scene with this Jeep Wagoneer, and I swear they're doing like 100 miles an hour off-roading, and the thing is like all over the dirt road, and I don't know how they didn't kill themselves driving the Jeep at that speed. Just a great episode with lots of great stunts. And I've got a cool piece of trivia on that episode too. When the General Lee is making that huge jump over the the stack of parked cars at the end of the episode, the car actually didn't make the jump the first attempt. The General Lee actually landed short and crashed into the top of the pile, and you can actually see it from one of the camera angles. That first sequence where the car is jumping over the ramp, you can see it's nosing down, and then suddenly it cuts to a different camera angle where the car has the nose up. That's because the first take for that stunt failed, and it landed short, so they actually had to jump a section generally to actually clear the jump, and the second one actually did. As you can tell, I was a huge fan of this particular TV show. I'm really grateful that there's museums like this, and this particular museum is actually operated by a cast member. Ben Jones, who played Cooter Davenport on the TV show, who was the local mechanic that repaired the General Lee and the cop cars and everything, he actually owns and operates 3 museums like this. There's also one in Luray as well as Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. This was my favorite TV show when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I did kind of switch to Knight Rider when Knight Rider came on in 1982. That kind of replaced the Dukes for me. I still watch both shows every week, but Knight Rider was kind of the bigger show for me. And what's interesting too is a lot of people don't realize that Dukes of Hazzard was such a huge phenomenon that Knight Rider was a show developed specifically to compete with the Dukes of Hazzard. Warner Brothers was making millions and millions of dollars off the merchandising of the show, and as you can see from the earlier video, that was a typical bedroom during 1980-81. I remember having my Dukes of Hazzard sheets and my Dukes of Hazzard curtains and my Dukes of Hazzard bicycle and my Dukes of Hazzard Mego action figures and my Dukes of Hazzard, Ertl diecast cars. I mean, the toys were everywhere, the merchandise was everywhere, and Universal Studios wanted a piece of that action, and that's why Knight Rider came along, because people were very car-centric in the early 80s. So you can't really talk about the Dukes of Hazzard without the 5th season coming up and how they cloned the Dukes boys. As I mentioned earlier, Warner Brothers was making a killing on all the Dukes of Hazzard merchandise. You know, the toys, the clothing, the curtains, everything. The licensing deals were crazy. Well, the two lead actors in the show, Tom Wopat and John Schneider, were upset with the fact that they weren't getting royalties off of all that merchandise. So in season 5, they basically went on strike, and Warner Brothers brought in two actors to portray basically straight clones of Bo and Luke Duke. They brought in characters named Coy and Vance, and they filmed, I believe it was about 18 episodes of the 5th season. So the two lead actors were missing in season 5 for most of season 5, and they had the clones. And I actually thought Coy and Vance did a pretty good job. I know a lot of fans hate them, and the ratings did tank when they were on, but you know, they were given an impossible task, and I think they did surprisingly well, especially towards the later episodes. Thanks for watching this episode of The Adventure Schmuck. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See everyone next week.